Hello and welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express Papers Chandigarh edition. Now, from today's news analysis, a couple of topics. The international section starts first, and here there is a focus on the failure of the UN Security Council. So we can work on the theme of the UNSC reforms. Besides, there is a mention of the term agripreneur. So agripreneurs, that is farmers with working with entrepreneur-like zeal. So this can be connected with the topic of doubling of farmers' income. Besides, in the editorial opinion section, there is one article telling us that the public healthcare infrastructure or the primary healthcare centers in the state of UP needs to improve. Now we can focus from Indian point of view, right? With important facts, etc. We can look over here. Then there is also a mention of the Arctics, that Arctics are melting, and how India can deal, in a deal to bring in consensus on this issue. So this is again an important topic. Besides other topics you have already covered in the news in some way or the other. Now coming to the world news. Before starting, I would like to tell you that Israel-Palestine issue is first mentioned here, and then at the last page, the explainer section also it is covered. So in the front page, we get to know that Israel launched a very small, brief ground attack on the Gaza, right? So that ground offensive has started. Okay, moving on. UN Security Council, one of the principals organ of the UN responsible for security, peace-related things. So this has again failed to deal with the Israel-Hamas war. Fine, it has failed to deal with this war. Okay. Now this is not the first time. One is, of course, Israel-Hamas war. But besides this, what about the Ukraine-Russia war? What about the Syrian war? What about the Afghan-Taliban issue or the migrant crisis? We can keep going on and on. UNSC has failed. One of the reasons is these permanent members use their veto powers. US used its veto power some time back. China used its veto power. So there are certain structural issues with the UNSC, right? So one is we can look at the assessment of the UNSC. Is it relevant? And then what reforms can be brought in place? There are definitely failures, but at the same time, UNSC provides a platform for negotiations and diplomatic engagement to bring in peace as well. So there are certain shortcomings, but there are also positives. So we have to prepare an assessment of the UNSC, plus, of course, what reforms can be brought into the place. And for writing about reforms again, we will have to mention the assessment of this body. Now, from India's point of view, India has been saying that UNSC needs to be more representative. Presently, there are these 5 permanent members and 10 temporary members. So it wants India should get representation here as a permanent member. Okay, coming to the front page, very interesting news. So starting from the left here, Haryana launches pension scheme for old trees. Trees upwards of 75 years, they will be getting pension. Don't you think this is interesting? Elderly population, elderly people who have worked in the government, etc., they get pension for their services. But here trees are being given for above 75 years. Under the scheme, Pran Vayu Devta pension scheme, that the trees give us life, they get the life air, oxygen through photosynthesis, and therefore we're giving them pension, right? They have served us well, they have provided us with ecological services. Now for their upkeep, we'll be providing them pension. So this is basically a novel approach wherein money is allocated for the uplift, for the protection and the well-being of the trees and the forest. That's all. But obviously we are giving the status of a living being. This is something that may be looked into. Trees as living beings, because pension is given to not living beings but human beings. So something similar happened sometime in 2015, where rivers were given the status of human beings. So a court case was there wherein the environmental activists, they said that Ganga Yamuna pollution is taking place. Government is not doing much about it. So the court, and it did, court gave the status of Ganga and Yamuna that of a human being. And by declaring them as human being, by the way, they are river goddesses. Okay, so human being, that meant it kept the fundamental rights open to them, because fundamental rights are available to all these human beings. So by that logic, to these rivers as well, and the fundamental right to environment, right to life. So those are provided to these rivers. So we're seeing a trend where the nature is being equated to human beings, like how human beings are protected, they should also be protected. This is a trend that is emerging. Okay, coming to the next news, the Qatar issue. So, in Qatar, there is this company, Dhara Global. So this company, it was employing 8 former Navy officers. There is an allegation that these officers were engaged in espionage, spying, and thereby they were arrested, and now they have been handed over death penalty. Fine. So they have been handed over death penalty. The government is challenging it. The government is using diplomatic ways of how they can be released, but as of now, nothing has happened. The most severest punishment has been given. So that's it, actually, death penalty. Now, the charges on which these people are arrested, they are not publicly disclosed. Very little is known about this issue. But yes, it appears to be a case of espionage. And it is also said that these Navy officers were in the process of inducting Italian stealth submarine, secret submarine known as U2I2. Next. You must have heard about these Rath Prabharis few days back. That is, the government is organizing this Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, and in this yatra, the bureaucrats who will be called as Rath Prabharis. Prabharis means leader, Rath means the chariot. So these bureaucrats will go to the public and tell the public as to what good initiatives their respective governments have done. So unlike, in this typical way, politicians go to the public, they hold rallies, here bureaucrats are being told to go to the public and tell the good works that the government has done. So it has raised the issue of politicization of the public servants. It raises the concerns of violation of one of the foundational values mentioned in second ARC, known as non-partisanship. Right. So one is, of course, politicization of the civil services, and other is that this activity, Rath Prabhari thing, is happening at a time when elections are around the corner. Last 8-9 years, nothing of this sort has been heard, but now it is being heard, and just before the elections. So the Election Commission has also come to the picture. It has taken note of this issue following the complaints. Now they are saying that this yatra will happen, but it will not happen in those states where elections are about to take place, or where model code of conduct is in place. In fact, in those states, these Rath Prabharis are named as nodal officers. Now, this is not right, as prima facie speaking. Nodal officers are people who will be responsible to report on the election and how elections are done neutrally, objectively, while they were required to campaign in a way. So, that sense, it is not right. So, just scrolling. Next news should be Agripreneurs. Farmer, entrepreneur, agripreneur. So agripreneur is basically agriculturist, farmer, working with entrepreneur like zeal. So it's one of the ways as to how the farmers can increase their income. So obviously we keep talking about doubling farmers' income. We say that agri-GDP is not growing. Agri-GDP is around 4% at the moment, while the national GDP is around 7%. It was 10% also, but agri-GDP is not increasing. So that means that a significant amount of farmer population they are not rewarded. The growth is not inclusive enough for significant amount of population. Now, that will happen when the farmers get more money, and they get money by producing more and selling the crops, selling their produce at a higher price. Right? These are only two possible ways. Now, one way is through MSP, minimum support price, the government declares so that the farmers get their due price. So that is one of the ways. But it has its limitations. More needs to be done. So the farmers have to find innovative ways also to increase their income, and that is agripreneurship. Right. Now here we have some examples of this. So it's Punjab specific news. It says that as there is a consciousness about gluten-free diet. Gluten is a protein that is found in cereals, naturally found in cereals, and it has some side effects like some people are allergic to it. So, okay. So millets do not have it. Plus the government has been focusing on millet. So millet is seen as an healthier alternative. So millets are being grown by the farmers. Plus these are hardy crops, so it doesn't affect the soil as much. Besides, this millet is mentioned. Plus these farmers are using their own brand labels. So branding them, which is also a case of food processing. Selling one way of selling is go to the market, sell your grains collectively. One is going directly to the consumer in a better packaged, better labeled product. So that is a case of food processing, and thereby getting higher margins, higher profits. So farmers going into food processing, and hereby the farmer also saying that, see, we are using sustainable farm practices. Are the things that we are selling under this brand name are done using sustainable ways. We are not using pesticides or fertilizers, which causes harmful effects. So this is good. Farmers, people, consumers will be willing to spend more because it has an healthier connotation to it. Then cultivating high value crops, moving towards high horticulture from cereal crops. We know how expensive tomatoes were recently. Okay. Then high value crops like medicinal crops, turmeric, etc. So those are also being taken up. So this is a short summary on agripreneurs. I feel it is important. Not the question has not been asked, but if it is asked, we should be prepared. Okay. So all election news. Now we come to the editorial opinion section. First article is telling us about the global stock market. It is saying that there are these global and domestic concerns. A global concern is one is the US bond yield. It is at an all-time high. So it is said that this yield is high. It's an indication of a recession coming up, because last time when this was at an all-time high was in 2007-8. 2008 we had a very bad recession. So conservatives believe that this is a early sign of a recession coming up. Plus overall the global economy doesn't look very well, right? TCS, Infosys they've given not very rosy projections. They have not given very good projections about the global economy. There is obviously, with the bond yield going up, the US banks will have to give higher interest rates. All of this combined may mean that there may be outflow of capital from developing economies like India, etc., to these countries. Plus, if money goes out, there will be a speculation, and dollars will appreciate vis-a-vis rupee or any other domestic currency. So that would again lead to flight of capital. So naturally, when flight of capital takes place, markets fall down. Right. So that's a story when it comes to this global factors. When we can also talk about the conflict in the West Asia, conflict in the Ukraine-Russia war, the continuation of this. So all those factors are there. Domestic concerns, they are saying that sluggish rural consumption. Interestingly, sometime back, I have done this in the analysis. Godrej saying that consumption is good. Today we have consumption is not good. Okay. Sluggish rural consumption, inflation is bit high, plus unemployment. They're saying that it has come down, but it is still very high. It's more of a base effect thing. It is still around 5-6% band. No, normally it is 2-3% of unemployment is also considered bad. Now it is at 5.56%. And if unemployment is more, obviously consumption will be less. Next is about this Biden US foreign policy thing. So it's basically saying, and it's talking about the capacity of the US. That's the main focus, capacity of the US in dealing with different theaters of conflict simultaneously. So at the moment, different theaters are Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Hamas, possibly the Asian region also, like the Taiwan, that may also be there. So multiple theaters are opening up. So there is a concern within US also that the US politicians are saying that US has weakened, they don't have the capacity to deal. India also feels that US might is coming down, China is rising. So they'll not be able to look into the focus is not so much on the issues elsewhere in the world. So those concerns are there. But the author over here begs to differ with a lot of facts. So he says that first of all, yes, we do say that the US economy is coming down, but it is still about 1/4 of the world GDP. It is 24% of the world GDP. So it's significant. It is 1/4. It may be coming down, but it is still very high. And if we look at China, yes, China is rising, but we are overstating China's growth. There are a lot of issues with Chinese economy which the government does not allow to come. We know there is a real estate crisis also. So it may take a significant amount of years, if it happens, that they overtake the US economy. Point number one. Because if economic might is there, then you go into the military, diplomatic, all those things. Then US has massive military depth, right? US has the capacity. With this Israel Hamas war, all of them, all these other countries are basically giving support, moral support. US gave them an aircraft carrier. Why? Because US has the base. US has the capacity to do it. Ukraine war, Ukraine is being supplied with weapons by the US. So US has the military might. In fact, if you look at the spending of the countries, US is, believe me, there are 10 countries, let's say in the rank. So US at the top, and it is more than the sum total of the other countries, which includes US and China also. So obviously they have a military might. And diplomatically also speaking, US has maintained a series of allies, relationships, and it has been very pragmatic. Yes, US says that we go with the diplomacy. They have, democratic ideals, but it is also following pragmatic this thing also. For example, is Israel, it has relations with Israel as well as Arabs, good relations. So using those relations, it can shape the narrative better than any other country can do. It has that capacity. Likewise, it has invested in, when we look at China, it is investing in India at the moment and the Southeast Asian nations. So it has a series of allies over here which can hold their own if required and also support US. So if the enemies of US believe, enemies of US, Moscow, Russia, Beijing, China, Tehran, if they believe that Iran, if US is distracted by multiple theaters of war, if we open up multiple conflict areas, China with Taiwan, Moscow with Ukraine, Iran with this Hamas issue that is taking place. So they are mistaken because US has the capacity to deal with this issue. Next, we come to this UP, public healthcare, and it is actually primary healthcare, PHC. Okay, so just quickly coming to the Uttar Pradesh. So they're saying that the healthcare setup in Uttar Pradesh, there is a lot of shortages. There's shortage of doctors, frontline medical professionals, and health infrastructure. How do we know this? We know this from the Central Rural Health Statistics. Plus, it has also come to light that the government says that they have a lot of these community healthcare centers and primary healthcare centers. But more than 200 of these are not even brick and mortar. So they're not even physical structure, they're temporary structures. So there is a shortcoming. Tomorrow, unfortunately, if something happens, the healthcare setup will not be able to deal with this scenario. And even with the present load, it is not able to deal with it. So more needs to be done. Now we have UP, right? We're done with that. Now coming to the Indian perspective. UPSC will ask you from Indian point of view, collectively. Okay. So in India's case, if we look at the public healthcare setup, of course, we need to do more on the public healthcare setup. So one is private healthcare, public healthcare. So the government healthcare we need to do because it provides for affordable healthcare, accessible healthcare. So that is the thing. Now, with the shortage of healthcare, which is there for India also, public healthcare, so it means there is a shortage of doctors, shortage of frontline medical professionals, shortage of diagnostic facilities. If there is a disease, diagnostics is not taking place properly. So that has to improve. Further, the out-of-pocket expenditure, the amount of money that a person has to pay from their own pocket, patient, so it is at a high. Now I have the recent data, it says that it has come down from 64.2 to 48.8%. But this is still significantly higher if we compare it with other countries. Many countries, the out-of-pocket expenditure, developed countries, is close to zero. So we are significantly high. It is at 48.8%, although it has come down. Okay. And this I have using the economic survey. I refer to the economic survey 22-23. And talking about doctor to population ratio, doctor to population ratio, they're saying it is, WHO says it should be 1 to 1000. Indian government is saying it is 1 to 834 doctors. That is, we have beaten the WHO statistic. We have more number of doctors per thousand population, or we can say 1.3, 1.1 something to 1000. However, this has more of these Ayush doctors. So even now it is somewhere at 0.8 is to 1000 actual indicators. So which is much less. So if you look at the MBBS doctors. So the doctor to population ratio is less. And if we look at the regional disparity, right? Cities have more doctors as compared to the rural areas. Tier 1 cities have more as compared to the others. So in certain areas there are hardly anything, and some places there are filled with doctors. And that is a problem. Right. So that's it. These are the issues. The rural, urban, tier 1 city, tier 2, tier 3 cities. So that bias is there. Okay. Besides, now of course we have these issues. One of the issues is the government is not spending enough on the healthcare. So we have the National Health Policy Document 2017, which says that the government should be spending 2.5% of the GDP on healthcare. So that time it was 1.28%, 2017. Now the government is saying, according to the latest economic survey, this has gone to 2.1% of the GDP, which is a significant hike. Now I think, my personal view, I think that this is coming from the insurance. Ayushman Bharat is the main scheme. So maybe the outflow is going towards the insurance, not so much on the public physical infrastructure. Plus this data over here also indicates the same thing, that brick and mortar structures are not there. Doctors scarcity is there. Okay, so that may be a possible explanation for the sudden steep rise over here, which is actually good, but maybe more of this insurance thing. Okay, so that's it actually. And if somebody says, you can always say that 2.1 is significantly lower if we look at other world countries. US 17%, sub-Saharan countries, Sahel nations is also 7 to 8% of their GDP. We are at 2.1%. Next is about Arctics, warming up, breaking the ice. So Arctic, of course, you can visualize the map of or you can visualize the globe, and you know where Arctic is. It is in the North Pole. It covers the North Pole. It is also known as the Great White Shield. And this is melting because of the global warming. Now with the melting, what will happen? The ice will melt, the glacier will melt, sea surface temperature will rise, sea surface level will also increase. So this is not good. Cities like Bombay, etc., will get affected. Okay. Besides, besides, if you look at the globe, you must have studied about the pressure belt system. The Arctic and the Antarctic, the polar region is, because of it is very cold, it is high pressure area, and south of it is low pressure. So there are these pressure belts which influence the wind system. Now, because of the warming, the temperature of the Arctic will also warm this region, and thereby the high pressure will weaken. So this will affect the pressure belts. It will affect the planetary wind distribution across the globe. So we see the unpredictability of the monsoons at the moment. We see unwarranted events in the developed economies, also like global heating in the UK, South Africa, US. We are seeing that. UK is a colder country, but we saw the temperature rise to 45 degrees. There were drought-like situation, which never happens. In fact, UK is a country where you have regular rains. Then water stress. According to data from Composite Water Index, about half of the population of India is under water stress. We can also say heat stress also. So these weather events are there. Now, one thing you can do is, if you're writing your answer, do say that the burden of this thing, climate change, the disasters, the burden is more on the global south vis-a-vis the global north. So there is a line that you can add over here. It affects the global south disproportionately. Now, besides this, the Arctic, you can imagine it is covered with the glacier, the ice. Below this, there is the soil, the permafrost. This permafrost must be holding a lot of carbon, which is not yet exposed. So with the ice going, the carbon would be exposed, huge amount of carbon would be exposed, and this may increase the global warming. Besides, this glacier must be covering a lot of pathogens, bacteria, viruses. So very harmful diseases may also come to light with the glaciers going away. So these are the issues. The reason is obviously the global warming. Now, obviously, now if you look at the Arctic issue, if you look at the Arctic issue over here, melting, so there has to be a collective effort of the countries, especially in the vicinity. So there is a Arctic Council, whose members are basically the countries encircling the Arctic region. Plus, it has observer members like India, China, etc. Okay, so they should work together to deal with this issue. Now, they're saying, but it's basically the motive is not to conserve Arctics. Actual motive is not to conserve Arctics. The actual motive is how Arctic region can be taken so that this region can be exploited commercially. Anyways, so Arctic Council should work together dealing with the Arctic issue. And at the moment, there is a suspension because of Russia, which has about 50% of the borders, 50% of the Arctic circle. Right. And Russia is very keen on breaking the Arctic region. They are looking at the northern route. So north of Russia, if you go, this is the northern route, which will provide them better navigation, sea navigation and connectivity. So the authors are saying that India should take a pivotal role, like it did with the G20. They were able to come to a consensus. So India should play a pivotal role. It has the capacity to generate unanimity and to bring in reforms in Arctic governance. Okay. Army chief is saying from lessons from Ukraine that land warfare is important. I was thinking, why would somebody say land warfare is important? So maybe because in the context of cyber warfare is also emerging. There are unconventional means of wars, but land warfare, so the conventional ways of war are always there. Besides, if you look at the lessons from Ukraine war, we saw how the drones are being used, right? Cyber warfare we have seen. Plus, another lesson is that when the war started, we felt Russia will just finish of the Ukraine, but that did not happen. So a smaller state, perceivable weaker state, was able to hold its own. So guerrilla warfare and through various war tactics, they were able to defend. So these are certain lessons. Okay, coming to the economy section, we start from the left. Many states in the US have sued Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, for affecting the mental health as well as the physical health well-being of the children, adolescent age group particularly. Now, this cases they are fine. Uh, so they're saying that see, this social media company is using tactics, it's which is addictive. So the children are getting addicted to the social media, the more screen time. So those things are there. It is affecting their physical and mental well-being. Besides this, the children are seen to be affecting with the phenomena known as body dysmorphia. It is basically people, they want the photographs and everything, selfies and everything. They want to look good on the social media. Now, because of that trend and being so conscious about yourself, they feel that our features are not nice, don't look nice, and all those things. So they're more conscious about them, giving them a sense of inferiority about their body and their looks. So that is body dysmorphia. 32% of teen girls felt that they felt bad about their bodies, and Instagram made them feel bad. Okay. Besides, the social media companies use these manipulative tactics to manage their behavior, market them without their consent. So those are also things. So people have gone to the several states have filed a case against Meta. Now, at large, this is a social issue. So, GS1, it was also dealing with the digital well being. This is a matter of time, right? It may be asked in the mains. War worries, high US yield keeps markets jittery. Okay, so bond yield is high. It's seen as a precursor to the recession. So, that is one thing. Besides, when the bond yield is high, that means that the investors are getting more money on buying and selling of bonds. So it is expected that there will be outflow of capital from emerging economies. So this is emerging economies like India, China, etc. It's outflow of capital. So this will affect the current account deficit and currency strength of the domestic emerging economies. Now with the bank yields going up, bond yields going up means people are preferring to buy government bonds instead of banks. So that would mean that banks will have to increase their rates. So when the banks increase their rates, again we see flight of capital from India to outside, and likewise for other countries. And when the bond yield here increases, Indians will also have to increase their yield to make their markets attractive. So this is not good. Okay, so not good for the equity markets, not good for the overall economy. It is inflationary because if money goes out, dollar appreciates as compared to rupee, we have to spend more money for imports, especially fuel. So fuel prices will also go up. Okay, next, tax base widens, trend of migration of individuals towards higher income. Okay, Central Board of Direct Taxes Secretary is saying. So I refer to the PIB, same facts are referred, same. This is August, same thing is mentioned in this article. So they're saying more people are filing ITRs, more. So tax base means number of people who are paying taxes, right? So tax base. So this base has widened. Okay, so one indication is of course this thing ITRs that has been filed, plus more people are coming under the ambit of tax slabs. So if income increases, your tax slab also increases. So tax base widens. So you're actually paying tax. So one is you filing ITR, one is you actually paying tax. So that will happen when your income increases. So that is what the CBDT is saying. Now I think that you should know these facts. Plus you should know as to steps being taken to widen their tax base. This time, particularly, it was the AI, artificial intelligence, and the capability that they could tally the ITRs being filed with the actual bank statements. So that happened, and that there was a sense of fear. In fact, before the last date, there was already tax notices coming to that you have filed it wrongly, you have given wrong rental agreements. So those things came to light, and people had to actually do it correctly. And the government simply says in this PIB that it is that they have made it easy for filing of tax, which is not right. So they have started with this annual information statement, taxpayer information summary, new e-pay tax payment platform. It was actually very hard to log in, but yes. Anyways, they have to praise themselves. ONGC hopes to recover over 400 million dividend from Venezuela. Venezuela is a Latin American country located over here. It is having sanctions. US is saying that we will revocate the sanctions if you bring in reforms. Venezuela. India begins producing reference fuel. What is this reference fuel? Reference fuel is normal fuel. Only thing is reference fuel is high grade fuel which can be used for testing automobiles. So India was earlier importing it. Now they can manufacture it. Okay, next APAR ID. So APAR ID is a part of India's stack, public digital health, digital infrastructure. So this is automated permanent academic account registry ID. All students starting from pre-primary level, they will have an APAR ID. All their academics, the credits that they have scored, all the things that they have done, like report cards, etc., they will be entered into academic bank credit, ABC. Right. So APAR ID is the ID of the person. Their whatever performance is there from school to school, it will be mentioned over here. Suppose one migrates from one school to another, so this ID will be universal, and the other teacher will put it. Only the schools or the teachers can fill in data over here. Nobody else. What is the advantage? So main thing they are saying is that it will provide a lifelong support, and the ID is there. It will help the state governments track the academic achievements of the students at the same time, and I think that's the main thing, to reduce fraud and duplicate educational certificates, the wrongful things that people do. So with this academic bank credit and the APAR ID, so that authentication is done. So abuse of this giving fraud certificates and all those things, that should not take place. So that's it actually. And that's it. This is an explainer about the key learnings from the Israel-Palestine war. I'm not doing it. So that's it. Bye.